What's going on, everyone? Good morning. I got a little different video for you guys today. I'm working on an RSX, but it's actually not my RSX. I got this customer's RSX right here. He hit me up. He wanted a clutch done, so I told him I'll take care of it. We are doing a competition clutch with a competition clutch flywheel as well. And I'm gonna kind of just give you guys a quick walkthrough on how to do it on an RSX. The first video ever uploaded the first video I ever uploaded on YouTube was me doing a clutch job on an 08 Civic Si. I'll leave the link down below. And that was probably one of my biggest videos, and that was the first video I ever made, so the quality wasn't that good. I was still a little awkward in front of the camera, and it's one of the biggest ones I ever did. So I want to kind of update a clutch video and with better quality, and just kind of explain to you guys. I'm going to kind of go through it a little quicker than I did on that Civic, because I had that Civic for 2 days. This one I only have for a day, so I kind of got to get it done. It's Sunday. I have work tomorrow. So I'm gonna inform you guys on like the important information, but most of like the taking the battery out and just taking everything else off, I'm just gonna kind of breeze through it, and hopefully you guys take some good information out of this. So obviously the first thing you want to do before you get started, loosen up your wheels before you lift the car up, pop the center cap off of the rim, and then you're gonna want to loosen your axle nut like I explained when I replaced my axles on my RSX. You're gonna do all that, and then we're gonna take the wheels off, and we're gonna be working all in here. So we're going to take our battery out, we're going to take the intake out, we're going to unloosen all these connectors, the shifter cables. We're going to do all of this area, and once we're there, then we're going to start getting ready to work on popping our axles out and dropping the subframe. One thing I want to touch on when you guys are in the middle of taking all of that off, when I take shifter cables off, I'm not sure if people usually take the whole bracket and everything off. I'm going to show you the way I take them off. So this one I already kind of got started working on. Let me see if I can get some more light there. So originally what you're going to look at, you're going to see like a little cotter pin that holds this little plate in there. So you'll take the cotter pin out, so this is pretty much free, right? And then in the back it's going to have one of these, I think they're like U-clips. That's what they look like to me. It's this clip. It just slides right in there the opposite way like this. So I'll usually soak that with a lot of penetrating oil, whatever, and I'll get a flat head, just kind of stick it, work it up, and then I'll get channel locks and just pull it right up. So eventually what you're going to do, you're going to pull these two off. There's a little plastic washer behind it, so don't lose that. Take that off. So then this is free, so this can slide up, and this might be, you have to pull it back. So you see the way it is, it's not going to come straight up, it's kind of locked in there, so you're just going to want to pull it back so you can slide it out. So that's free, and then we work this right off. Might be a little rusted, and that's it. And so that's the way I take the cables off. So I just kind of stuck them to the side. Like I said, some people probably will leave all of this on right here, and they'll just take the two cotter pins off and take the whole bracket off with it. I don't really do that. I mean, it might be more work, but this is the way I've always done it. So in case you guys are wondering, that's the way. Just take your cables off, slide them to the side. So after this, we're still going to work on taking our clutch slaves line. We're gonna have to get it from under the intake. I'm still not, yeah, I'm probably gonna end up taking this intake off, and then after that line we're going to drain the trans, because I am also doing a drain and fill on this car. So then after the drain and fill, we should be able to start working under the car, and we're going to loosen up all the ball joints. All right, so we got some time that's passed. I'm at the point where I'm ready to drop the subframe. I'm going to give you guys a quick look of what's going on right now. All right, so here's where I'm at. The ball joint was already popped off. The sway bar link is already off. This one actually broke on me. As you can see, the ball is out on the top part. So I told the customer he has to get another, well, two of them, because they just pretty much broke on me. They're loose on the bottom down here. The motor mounts are loose, and I used a two jack method, kind of like how I did it in the Civic. One in the back, one in the front. So I'm going to slowly work the subframe down little by little until it comes down. So all that's left is the 419s, which should be one, yep, right there, and then the other one is right there. I'm shining the light on it. There you go. So there's two on the other side, and the subframe is going to come down. So as of right now, once this subframe comes down, the only thing holding the engine and trans is the two side mounts, which is that one right there, and then the driver's side, or the passenger side mount. So the engine's not going to fall once we drop this subframe. Also, you can see I have the slave cylinder just kind of tucked over there, and everything's out of the way. You can see there's no bolts in that motor mount, and in the rear mount it's so hard to get to. What I did here, let me show you. All right, so the rear motor mount's right there. It's so hard and tight to get to the bolt that goes through the mount. I took the bolts off of the bottom of the mount, so there's one there, there's one on the other side, and then there's this weird looking one in the front, which are these three right here. So I just took those off, so that's going to allow the subframe to come down while the motor mount stays on the trans side. So I'm going to see if I set the camera up, and we're going to work this subframe down slowly after we loosen it up, and then pop the axles on next. Alright, so you guys saw me. That's how I usually drop the subframe. It'd be way easier if you had someone to help you, but when you're by yourself, you're just constantly going back and forth, making sure the subframe doesn't fall. Really, I mean, it almost slipped off the back of the jack. I had to readjust the front one, take that wood out so it wouldn't move. So that's out. Sorry, I'm a little tired. I'm really trying to get this done. But so now the engine, like I said, the engine is floating on the two driver and passenger side motor mounts. And I'm going under, and I pop the axles out, so they're all out. So now it's pretty much ready to start dropping the trans, and you have to put a jack stand under the motor. So I'm going to show you the setup, but as I'm under there getting ready to loosen all the bolts up, I see something because I took the inspection cover off the transmission just because it has to come off. And I want to show you something that shows me that this clutch is just completely annihilated. I mean, I felt it when I pulled it in, but this just pretty much tells me this clutch is toast. So here's how I have my jack stand set up, just 2 blocks of wood under the oil pan. The oil pan is not completely flat, it's kind of curved. It goes down, so I'm trying to put it at the lowest part, which would be kind of holding it back there, just to try to hold it straight. It's going to shift a little bit when I drop the trans, but that's the best way I have it right now. But here's the inspection cover I was talking about, so you can kind of see the flywheel. And I'm looking in here, let's see if you guys can see. Kind of, it's hard to hold the light, but right at the corner you see all like that little fuzz and that fur. That's clutch material. So that's, I'm pretty sure when we take this off there's going to be barely any clutch material left on that disc, but that shows me, yeah, this clutch is done. That fur shouldn't be, or just that fuzz shouldn't be anywhere in there. So next thing we're gonna have to do is take all the trans bolts off all around the side. But before we start obviously loosening them, I'm going to have a jack. I'm still not sure if I'm going to put a jack with like a block of wood to try to hold this trans even, so that way when it comes down it doesn't just fall, because I'd rather the subframe fall than the trans. If your trans falls, that's a bad day. So I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to do that by myself. So let me figure that out and then I'll show you my setup. Alright, trans is out. I just didn't have the camera running because I needed to figure it out, but I tried like 4 different methods to try to figure it out. I ended up calling my pops. He came to help me. I ended up just using one jack. So as you can see, the trans is out. I had the jack holding it, and as I loosened everything up top, I had my dad working the jack, and I was on the floor basically balancing the trans. So he would loosen it down, I would balance it, and then I'd push it out. You know, just a whole process until we got it this low to the ground. One thing I did have to do with the trans though is I had to take this top, I guess it's a post mount for the actual trans mount, because when you're pulling the trans out you have to slide it backwards, and so when I would slide it backwards it would just hit the frame. So I had to take that mount out, and on most intakes the trans has this mount right here. So this will be up. This is what your stock air box bolts to. Well, he's got a cold air intake, so I'm probably going to take this off for him because he's not using it, but I just loosened it and moved it sideways because that was also stopping me from hitting the frame. So I slid everything out. We got the clutch out. Here's the flywheel. Flywheel is actually in good shape. It's not really any burn marks on it. It's okay, but the clutch disc is worn. This thing is done. There's not really any material left on it. You can just see it's all the way down to the rivets. So this was done, and the pressure plate is not, it's not really any hot spots too, so it wore out evenly, which is good. So this is the competition clutch. I'm not sure what stage it is. Stage 2. All right, so it's a stage 2 clutch. So what they give you is they'll give you obviously your new clutch disc. You get your new pressure plate. So there's your new pressure plate, and the also cool thing is they give you a new throwout bearing, your clutch tool, and a pilot bushing, which is that little where is it? That little brass piece right there. Let's see if I take it out for you. So they give you a new pilot bushing, which is actually nice because when I did my clutch, I didn't get one of these. I had to get one of these separate. And this goes inside your crank, in the back of the crank. I'm going to show you guys how to remove one of these. But basically, this is going to go into your crank. And if this was your input shaft from your input shaft from the trans, it's got to line up evenly in there, just like that. So let me show you guys a little trick. I believe I did it on the Civic, but a little trick on how to remove these if you don't have any pullers. Guys, so here's the engine, and here's where your pilot bushing usually goes. It's in here in the crank. If sometimes you're lucky, you might just be able to pull it out with your finger. This one I can't really do it. So the way I'm gonna get it out, it's maybe you've heard of this method, is with bread. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just break this bread up. I'm gonna stick it in here, and then I'm gonna get a socket or something that's close enough to the size of this inner diameter. So in this case, it's a 14 mil deep socket, and we're just gonna tap it in, and the bread essentially is gonna fill up all the gap back there. And the more you tap it, the more the bread fills. It's just gonna start walking this bushing out. So let me show you. So just break up little pieces of bread. Just stick it in there, and I use bread because it's less of a mess. People use grease sometimes. I've done that before. I don't really like the way it works, so I stick to using bread. Or you can just use the right tool, but I don't have it. All right, so here we go. So we're just gonna slowly tap it till it backs. All right, I'm gonna get some more bread and stick some more in there and tap it some more. Gonna get some more. I'm just gonna keep doing this until it comes out, but you don't want to overstuff it because then you're not going to be able to push it out. All right. Alright, so it looks like what the problem is right now, why this is giving me such a hard time, is because the bread is actually filling up the socket, so it's not pushing anymore, it's actually pushing the bread through the socket. So we're going to have to find a way to keep this from filling up, or use a bolt that's big enough. Alright, I got it out. Here it is. Here's the old one. What I ended up doing is grabbing a screwdriver, a flathead, and going in and pulling it from the back, since the bread actually pushed it out a little bit. And then I would just kind of tap it like that just to pry it out. And I went all over. Just be very careful when you're doing that. You don't score the inside of the crank. So that's out. Now we're just going to put the new one on. I like to spray these a little bit just so it'll go in a little easier. I'm just going to line it up. You're going to find a socket that's about the same size as this. Not as the inner diameter, as the outer diameter. And going even, but to start it, you can use a hammer, but make sure you're hitting flat. And just kind of tap it lightly. As you can see, it's a tight fit, so that's good. So I'm just going to go flush with it. And just don't, like I said, make sure the hammer is flush with it. because if you go at an angle, you're going to twist it. As you can hear, I'm bottomed out, so now I'm going to find something that's the same outer diameter and push it all the way in. Alright, so after you got it pretty much, you don't have to go all the way, you just want to get it in a good amount. Just get your alignment tool and make sure it fits in snug, which it does. Alright, because that's where your input shaft is going to go. And you can see we're alright, so I got it in. Alright, so now we're going to clean all this up. It's got a lot of clutch material right here, as you can see. So we're going to clean all this up for him and then start putting our flywheel on. I'm going to show you the torque procedure, or how much I torque it to, just in a crisscross pattern. Plate, the clutch disc, pressure plate, and let's just put it all back together. Alright, so just like any kind of rotor or pretty much flywheel, you're always going to want to wipe this surface down with some brake clean and a rag just to get all that oil off, because they put these, you know, this kind of film on it so it doesn't rust during transportation. So we wiped all that off. I have one bolt just on here just to make sure this flywheel doesn't fall off. What I always do with flywheel bolts is I use red Loctite. So you just use your red Loctite. I always put just a little bit on all the flywheel bolts, not on the pressure plate bolts, flywheel bolts, because you do not want these to back out. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to put some red Loctite, just a little bit on the threads. I don't know if you guys can see, just that's it, just a little drop. We're going to go right in. We'll make sure this is lined up. Okay. I'm going to do that to all of them, and then we're going to torque these to 90 foot-pounds, and then we're going to put the clutch disc on with the alignment tool and the pressure plate, and I'll tell you what the torque is for the pressure plate after this. Alright, same thing with your pressure plate. You want to spray some brake clean on the surface area just to get any of those oils off. Now this pressure plate's only going to go on one way, and it's going to line up with these tabs on the flywheel. So if you put it on and it doesn't line up, just keep moving it around. You want to feel to make sure it went in, and it looks like I got it. Alright, so I got it. Hopefully that'll stay. We're going to get some blue Loctite, and we're going to put blue Loctite on all the bolts. Alright, so just like the flywheel, you're going to torque all these up in a crisscross pattern, and I torque my pressure plate bolts to 24 foot-pounds. The manual says 19. I don't really like that number. I think that's too small, so I just go up a little bit to 24 foot-pounds with some blue Loctite, because sometimes, you know, you do take this pressure plate off. If you are going to go to another clutch, I just feel I don't want the flywheel bolts to come out, so I use red on those. So it's going to be harder to get those off later on down the road. But the pressure plate bolts, since there's not that much torque, 24 foot-pounds, blue Loctite, you'll be alright. Now that we got the clutch all on there, the next thing we're going to attack is going to be this throb bearing right here. And I can hear it's a little worn, but one thing I did notice I want to show you guys, this should be able to push right off, and you can see how much tension I have, and I can see a whole bunch of debris just building up around it. When I pulled this car in, I noticed the clutch pedal was kind of hard, and I think this is why, just because this had you had to really push hard on it just to release this fork. I don't know if you guys saw that fall. All this clutch material is just built up around this shaft right here. I think once we clean all this up and we re-grease it, it'll make it a lot easier, but now that I'm forcing it, this is the way it should move. Yeah, so I want to clean this up. I want to get this off. The way you get this off, there's springs back here. We'll take this dust cover off so we can get to those springs. Well, it's one spring. So we got this off, and you should be able to kind of work it in there. Alright, So I released the spring. Now this should be able to come right off. Alright, so we'll take the fork out and I'll show you what it looks like. So here's what the back of the fork looks like. As you can see, it's all this clutch material is just everywhere, but you see this spring on the inside. So what you do is you just kind of take it out. Sorry, I took the light away. Just like that. So you're gonna pop these out, and that's gonna allow you to slide the fork out. So we're gonna clean all this up. We're gonna put grease right in here in the middle where that ball would go, right in there. So we're gonna grease all that up, and then when we're gonna come back, we'll slide this out. Now you can see it's even a hard time coming out. We're gonna grease all around here, and we're gonna grease right here at the tip of the input shaft. Grease this ball up right here. We want all of this clean and greased up. We're gonna put it all back together, and the transmission should slide in pretty good. All right, so I did a quick clean on the inside of this trans. I specifically paid most attention to right in here. I made sure that this shaft and this ball and the tip of this was wow, that's dirty. This was all pretty much clean. So the grease I use, I just stick with the OEM, the Honda Urea high temp grease. That's what I've always used. So you want to be selfish with this. You want to be liberal. So I just get some and I just start all over here. This all needs to stay greased. You don't want it to be dry, especially because we just put brake clean on it. We're going to want to make sure this is nice and greased up, because this is what your throttle bearing rides on. And so this is probably why all that clutch material got stuck on it, because I'm pretty sure this is the original clutch that's in it. I have to check. But because the grease that was still there just picked up all the debris. So that's good. That means it was greased, but unfortunately, once the clutch started to go, it just picked up all that material. Alright, so we're going to put some on the ball too. Put a little more here so we can make sure this slides in good. Alright, so that's pretty much, you're pretty much good there. Next, where I put grease in as well is on the clutch fork. So I like to put it in certain places. I like to put it inside here where it'll ride on the ball, and then I like to put it on the contact points. Right here you'll see they're worn out. I like to put some grease there as well. And then we're going to put some when we come back up top on this side. This is where your slave cylinder goes in. It's really dark, I'm sorry about that, but right in that ball or in that hole, we're going to put some in there. The slave cylinder is going to go in there. Sometimes if that's not greased properly, you'll hear some squeaks, and most of the time it's coming from there. So we're going to grease all of this up, and then we're going to slide our throwout bearing on there, and we're set to go. We can put the trans back. Whatever grease you have left over on your finger, you can just slide, spread it on the inside of the throwout bearing. It's not going to hurt it. Okay, so now we're going to slide our fork in. Slide this. Make sure that's all on there. And once you have it set, you could just push this in. You don't have to worry about that fork. Just make sure it's lined up. Oh, there it goes. This is the way a throwout bearing is supposed to operate. Nice and smooth. So we have it all greased up nice. Oh, look. Too much. We just pop that out. We got to make sure it's in that spring better. There you go. And realistically, you're not going to have this much movement. You're going to have that much when you're stepping on the pedal. So I'm just overdoing it right now. But that just goes to show you everything is good. Nice and greased. Better than it was before. You put the dust boot back on it. And I'm probably going to move the camera to the side so I can line this up correctly. And we're pretty much almost done with this. Alright guys, so the car is gone. It's all done. I pretty much, like I said, this is going to be a more condensed video on how to do a clutch on a K-Series. In this case, an RSX. If you really are looking for an in-depth video on how to do it, definitely go check the link out that I'll leave in the description on how I did on an SI. On that SI video, I went real in-depth on what to do on replace a clutch on a K-Series, because it's virtually the same. The only differences I covered in this video was, the difference between the SI and the RSX chassis. So that's why this video was a lot shorter, because I was just basically going over the same process I did in the first video. So I hope that video was helpful for you guys. If you liked it, definitely give me a big thumbs up. The customer was happy. It's just a night and day difference now. Before, you
pretty much came off the clutch and the car would barely move. You barely come off the clutch now. And did I say that right? You can come off completely the clutch the first time and it would barely move. Now all you gotta do is come up a little bit and it rolls. It just starts rolling in 500 mile braking period, I told him, and he's good to go. So definitely give me a big thumbs up if you like this video. Hit subscribe if you're new. I try to switch it up as much as I can, but I'm pretty much an RSX guy. I've had my RSX for close to 8 years now, so I know those cars inside and out, and that's why I do a lot of work on them. And that's why most of my channel is a lot of RSX stuff. But I do work on all Hondas. I'm not so strong on B series though, so I'm working on that. Next video, we're probably going to get back onto my RSX. We're going to see what's going on with that. I definitely have to get cracking on what's going on with that because H-Day's right around the corner. So I will catch you guys in the next video. Stay motivated and keep making those streets louder.